everybody, it's Lori again and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I would like to share with you how easy it is to make and can corn cob jelly. Now a few days ago I made a video about canning sweet corn, and in that video I did share the beginning steps of corn cob jelly, which was after I'd cut the kernels of corn off the cob, I took about a dozen of those cobs and I put them in another pan and covered them with water and just simmered them for about 30 minutes. And I have collected that juice. I just simmered all of the good flavor out of those cobs, and I've taken that juice, and I was not able to make my corn cob jelly that day because I had, well, life going on, and I had already spent as much time in the kitchen as I could because I had other things to tend to. So what I did is I collected that corn cob juice and I just stuck it in a couple of quart jars and I threw that into the refrigerator. Now it's 3 days later, I have time and I can make my jelly today. So I just wanted to share with you that yes, you can collect that juice. It doesn't have to be made into jelly the same day. It can stay in your refrigerator up to around 3 or 4 days before you get to it. Now I don't suggest much longer than that because it will kind of go sour and it will start to ferment and start to smell funny and taste funny. So if you're going to put off making your corn cob jelly for another day, I suggest to get it done within 3 days. Just refrigerate that juice and within 3 days get to making that corn cob jelly. I'm going to page down. This is so super simple, you guys. It doesn't get any more simple than this. So I have boiled my corn cobs in water, and I've just collected that corn cob water from the corn cobs. And I have 2 quart jars today. Now, a single recipe of corn cob jelly is 4 cups of corn cob brine, 4 cups of sugar, and 1 package of Sure-Gel. That's all there is to it. So today I'm going to make a double recipe. These are quart jars. We all know a quart jar contains 4 cups. So I actually have 8 cups. I'm doing a double recipe. But for a single recipe, you would only need 4 cups of brine. So what I'm going to do, you can see in the bottom of my jar, there are some bits and pieces of like corn cob, corn kernels that have come off. Now, if you want to include that in your jelly, it is okay to do. I prefer to have a clear jelly. If you have chunks of, chunks of fruit or whatever, it's considered more of a jam. But it isn't an issue if you want to have all these little bits and pieces in there. It really isn't an issue. You just go ahead and you do you. But what I do is I take a wire mesh strainer and I line it with just a clean piece of cheesecloth. And all I do is I just then go ahead and I drain that corn cob juice through that strainer and cheesecloth. And it just kind of gives me a nice, clean, clear jelly. Okay, so I have corn on my thumb. I can just tell this is going to be a real smooth one today. All right, so anyway, I have my strained juice in my pan. Now, like I said, if you were doing a single recipe, you would only need 4 cups of brine, and then you need 1 package of Sure-Gel. But since I am doing a double recipe, I have 8 cups of brine. I'm going to use 2 packages of Sure-Gel. So we have our brine. We're just going to add our Sure-Gel to that brine in the pan. And this is just the original regular Sure-Gel. All right. And then you're going to whisk that up really well. And then, now this is not required, this is optional. I'm going to add a little bit of heat to mine. We dehydrated some jalapeno peppers. Let's see if you can see it. Oh, the lighting in my kitchen, you guys, is just something else. I dehydrated and powdered some jalapeno peppers last year. And with time, these things get pretty doggone hot because peppers intensify with time. But I'm going to elect to do a spicy corn cob jelly. Now, you don't have to do that part if you don't want to. And if you would rather use like a fresh jalapeno pepper, go ahead and throw some chopped jalapeno pepper in there if you like it hot and spicy. If you don't like the heat, just make it plain, forget the peppers. But this time I'm going to add just a little bit of jalapeno powder to mine to give it a little bit of a bite, just because we kind of like that heat in our house. We like that surprise. And with corn cob jelly, well, any kind of jelly or jam, actually, it's kind of interesting to add a little bit of spicy peppers if you're into that type of thing. Because, you know, jams and jellies are just so sweet that you get that sweet and that heat combined, and oh, it's just really a good thing. So anyway, so with my home dehydrated and powdered jalapenos, now I know that these things are hot because, as I mentioned before, they kind of intensify with time. And I've been using this in other dishes, and it has a bite. And so for a double recipe, I only opted for a half teaspoon of powdered jalapeno. But now remember, that's a double recipe. So, you know, if you know your products, you just season according to your taste. But I'm only using a half a teaspoon because I know this stuff has a kick. So the spice is, like I said, an option. You don't have to do that. You can just make it plain. Corn cob jelly, to the best of my ability of explaining it, corn cob jelly kind of, like dandelion jelly, kind of resembles the taste of honey. But corn cob jelly has that honey taste with a little bit of a sweet corn finish in your mouth. It's so good. And it's so super simple. I'm just going to fly you right on through this. This one is not complicated at all, you guys. Anybody can do this. So we have our corn cob brine. We have our sure-gel in our pan. And now all we're going to do is turn on the heat and bring this to a boil. And then I'll be back in a minute. All right, guys, so hopefully you can see with the camera that this has come to a boil, okay? This was just our corn cob brine and our sure-gel, and it has now come to a boil. Now, when doing a single recipe, like I said, 4 cups of juice, 4 cups of sugar, 1 package of sure-gel. I'm doing the double recipe, so I have 8 cups of brine. I'm going to put in 8 cups of sugar, but right now I have the 8 cups of brine and 2 packages because of the double recipe thing going on. And now I'm going to add my sugar, which with my double recipe is 8 cups. Now I have 4 of them right here, and I will get 4 more as I kind of stir that up. Sometimes you got to be an octopus in the kitchen and have more hands than what we actually do have. So there we have 8 cups of sugar in our pan. Now I know that seems like a lot of sugar, but you know what? Whenever you're talking jams and jellies, it takes a lot of sugar. So we're just going to stir that and keep the heat on. Make sure that it all dissolves. And we're going to bring this up to a boil again, okay? So I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to stir it and make sure that nothing's stuck to the bottom of the pan, that everything gets nice and dissolved, and we don't have any burning issues. And once it comes back to a boil, then I will come back. All right, guys, I am back, and I wanted to show you something. You know, I talk about the 220-degree rule, and just on my other camera here, if I can get it focused, I want to show you that on the back of a candy thermometer, this is just a regular old candy thermometer. On the back of the candy thermometer, there are directions for hard crack, soft crack, all those different things. And if you look over here, it says jelly, 220 degrees. I don't know if that's in focus or not, but I just want to show you that it is there. Yeah, it's hard to focus in. But anyway, it does say jelly 220 degrees. So I am not making this stuff up. This is actually in the directions of or on your candy thermometer, okay? So what I do at this point in time is, obviously, I have my candy thermometer out. And I'm just going to place my clip where I can see what's going on my candy thermometer. And before my jelly comes to a really, really hard boil, I'm just going to take my candy thermometer and I'll move my clip down if I can, because my pot's not that deep. Put that clip right about where I feel like I need to have it to hold my candy thermometer on. Now your candy thermometer, obviously, if you've never used one before, it's going to kind of steam up from the heat of the jelly cooking. That's normal. Just kind of put it in there and that steam eventually is going to clear on that candy thermometer. Now another thing that I have done while I've been getting my jelly to a boil here is I have gotten my clean jars ready to go into the oven, and I've also prepared all of my lids. So I've washed my lids, new lids, and I've got my rings. So I've got my lids and my rings in a pan of water back here, okay? So when I reach a boil with my jelly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my jars into a cold oven, okay? Now, the reason why we want it cold is we want to avoid thermal shock, okay? So, prepared jars into a cold oven, and then I'm going to just turn it on to 220 degrees to get those jars hot and sanitized while I'm boiling my jelly. 220, push start, and it will heat up. The jars will heat up with the oven. Now another thing that I'm going to do while my jelly is boiling is I'm going to get my rings and my rings and my lids heated up in a pan of water. So I'm just going to get those going. I'll put those down on medium. You don't really want to boil them. You just want to get them good and hot. What I'm going to do today, because I'm making jelly, almost all of your jelly can be what is considered open kettle canned. And I am going to open kettle can my jelly today, which means hot sanitized jars, hot jelly, and a hot lid and ring. There's not going to be any further canning or processing that needs to take place. Now, if you feel more comfortable processing your jars after you fill them with your jelly, that's fine. You go ahead and hot water bath or steam can them for 10 minutes after you get your jars filled. But right now, let's just get back to that. You do your processing the way that you want to do it. I'm going to open kettle can them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to boil this jelly until it reaches 220 degrees on my candy thermometer. And with a single batch of jelly, sometimes that can take up to 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes. With a double batch of jelly, sometimes it can take 15, 18, even 20 minutes. But I just want to make sure that I reach that 220 degree mark, and then I know for certain this jelly will set. So I'm going to boil and boil and boil, and we'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so I'm back. Now, I want you, if you're using a candy thermometer, I want you to get down and look straight on at those numbers, okay? Don't be looking down on it like this. Make sure that you're looking at that candy thermometer straight on so that you get a really accurate reading, okay? And if you're like me, you might have to get your glasses. But anyway, another way to check, if you don't have a candy thermometer. Now, I had these bowls and this spoon in the freezer, okay? They're nice and cold. If you don't have a candy thermometer, I just want you, and I'm not going to drizzle it onto the bowls because I don't want anything to crack, but drizzle just a little bit of that jelly into a very cold spoon and let it cool off. Like I said, now I had these bowls in the freezer, so everything's very nice and cold. And let that little bit of jelly cool off really quickly. Now it's cold enough that I can put it into that cold bowl without cracking my bowl. Oh boy, let me see. Let me get my secondary camera here and see if that takes a better shot of what I'm doing here. Tab over and see if you can see what's going on in this bowl here. There. That's a little bit better. It's really hard on that upper camera. Okay, if you can see in my spoon now, this is what is called sheeting, okay? That means that the jelly is setting. Also in the cold bowl, you can see that my jelly is setting, okay? So this is another really good way of checking. If you don't have a candy thermometer, this is another way of checking to see if your jelly is going to set. Okay, you can see that it's really starting to become a solid mass. And this bowl and this spoon was put into the freezer, so they were very, very cold. But you can see how that is coating. Let me see if I can get my finger up here. Look at how that's setting on the spoon. Okay? So that's another good test. Oh, so good. All right, I'm going to tab back to my main camera. And now we are going to get on to the real good stuff. Now, if you have foaming issues, what I do is I add just a tiny little bit of butter, okay, to keep the foam down. And when I talk about a tiny little bit, I mean a tablespoon of less or less. You can put a tablespoon or less of butter into your jelly, and that will keep the foaming at a minimum. Okay, so we have reached 220. I'm going to turn this down on to low. Now I want to keep my jelly extremely hot. I'm going to turn my lids down there too. They're starting to get a little bit too warm. Now what I'm going to do, this is open kettle canning, guys. I'm going to get my oven mitt on. I'm going to take a hot jar out of the oven and simply ladle that hot jelly into the hot sanitized jar. Now we don't have to worry about thermal shock because that jar came out of a 220 degree oven. Our jelly is at 220 degrees. We're not going to have any thermal shock issues. Everything is hot and sanitized. My jars were in the oven for at least 10 minutes. So I know that they are properly sanitized. I know that my lids are properly sanitized and they are hot also. So all we're going to do now at this point in time is ladle our hot finished jelly into our jar to about a 1/2 inch headspace. And then we will wipe that rim without burning ourselves. Now this you kind of want to work quickly with. You want to keep everything hot. So we have hot jar, hot jelly, hot lid and ring. And what we're going to do is just place that, screw it on fingertip tight, and it's done. That will seal on its own as it cools. So let's grab another jar. Hot out of the oven. Get your fingers pinched on the door. I'm telling you, you guys, I knew it was going to be one of those days. I said this is going to be a doozy or something like that. I don't know, I'm fumbling around today. I don't think I slept well last night. And this is when accidents in the kitchen happen, is when you're just not on your A game. So I need to slow down and I need to think about what I'm doing so that I do not injure myself. All right, to about a 1/2 inch headspace. Then we are going to wipe that rim just to make sure no sticky jelly got onto the rim of the jar. And we will get a hot lid and ring to place on top. Screw it on, fingertip tight, set it aside. Okay, so one at a time, I'm just going to continue ladling my jelly, filling my hot jars, placing my hot lids and rings, and setting them aside to cool and seal. Now, like I said, if you feel, I guess, more confident heat processing your jars after you have your jelly into them, that is absolutely fine. What I would do is a hot water bath or a steam can of 10 minutes after you place your lids and your rings. And if you were going to do that, you don't necessarily have to have the hot lids and rings. You will want to have a hot jar just so that you don't have any thermal shock when you're filling your jars with the hot jelly. But at this point in time, you could place them in a canner and process them for 10 minutes. But the safety factor in jelly is very high because of the sugar content. So jelly does not necessarily have to be processed in the jar to seal it. It will seal on its own, and it will be shelf stable and safe. So I'm going to go ahead and continue just filling my jelly jars. Look at how beautiful this stuff is, you guys. It's just gorgeous. Such a pretty golden yellow color. And now remember, mine has a little bit of jalapeno in it. Yours might not, and that's fine too. But oh, this is just going to be a treat for us on so many things. I'm pretty excited about this one today. Hot lid and ring. That is not on there right. There, now it's settled down. And fingertip tight. Okay, so I'm going to keep filling my jars, and I'll be back in a few more minutes. All right, guys, so I'm back, and as you can see, I have open kettle canned my jelly in a whole bunch of different sizes here. Okay, over here I have pint jars. Excuse all my spice mess on my rack. See, I point out my own inefficiencies. You guys probably wouldn't have noticed that, but now I've pointed it out to you. Welcome to my mess on my spice rack. Anyway, I have a couple of pint jars. These are pints of corn cob jelly, all right? And I have what is considered a tall 3/4 pint jar. And then I have half pints and half pints of a different type and a half pint of a different type. It does not matter what your jar looks like or how big it is. As long as that jar is sanitized properly and hot, your lids are sanitized and hot, you can open kettle can jelly in any size jar. All right, now I want to come back to this because I want you guys to see this. Let's see if I can page up. Oh, there we go. Now, I have my jelly pan that we just cooked our jelly in, okay? And I want to show you, this is another sign that I'm going to have an amazing set of jelly, okay? I know for sure this stuff is going to set up in my jars because all of the leftovers that are in my pan, on my spoon, whatever, I can scrape that out and you can see how well that is going to set. Look at this. This is just the remainders out of the pan. And it's still even warm, okay? There's no trick to that, you guys. You just saw me scrape that out of that pan. This is the 220 rule. Look at this. This stuff, this pan is literally still hot, okay? It's just in the process of cooling down. Look at how quickly and how beautifully that sets. And yet it's not like rock hard candy, okay? I can spread it. Just a beautiful, beautiful set. Look at that, you guys. Oh, it tastes so good. I put the perfect amount of jalapeno in there. It's got just a little bit of a bite. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, so this is literally how easy corn cob jelly is. You can't get any simpler than this. And like I said, you can open kettle can it like what I did, or you can go ahead and you can process your filled jars of jelly in a hot water bath or a steam can for 10 minutes. Whatever you want to do. But it's easy, it's beautiful, it's so delicious. I hope that you found everything that I went over today useful in your kitchen. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow these to fully cool. Now you saw the jars that I had. I'm not going to move them at all. And what I'm going to do is after they cool, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to remove one of the screw-on bands and I'm going to turn that jar upside down for you after they have sealed and completely cooled so that you can see the amazing set on this jelly. So, going to let them cool for quite a few hours and then I'll come back and I'll show you how beautifully set they are. Be back in a while. Alright guys, so we are back. It has been approximately 6 hours since I made my corn cob jelly, and I can tell that it is already really setting up very, very nicely. Now, usually I leave my jars set for at least 12 to 16 hours. Some people say 24, but I can tell that these have already set. I can tell that they have sealed and I can tell that it's setting. So I'm going to take one of my smaller jars, a half pint jar, and I'm just going to open it for you so that you guys can see the set on this jelly. And that is such a good seal. I guess I'm going to have to use my opener. All right, this is just, oh, beautiful, beautiful. Let's see if you can see it here in the camera. There's just no liquid. This is how much I trust it, okay? You ready? Here's the real test. Now I do have a little bit of liquid from the wet lid, but this is the real test, guys. Look at here. Totally upside down. Look at that beautiful set. Gorgeous. Beautiful color, beautiful set. 220-degree rule. I swear by it. And any of your jellies or your jams, if you can get yourself one of those candy thermometers, they are the handiest thing for jellies and jams ever. Otherwise, like I showed you with the cold bowl and spoon, if you drip a little bit on that cold spoon, it should gel up pretty quickly. You know, the trick is to get your jelly to cool down so that you can see what the consistency and the set is going to be by the time your gel fully cools on its own. And that cold spoon is just a quicker way of doing it for a test. So the spoon, the cold spoon, the cold bowl, that's a really good test. And then that sheeting that I showed you on the spoon also, where you can just kind of tell that it starts to sheet off and it's starting to gel. That's another test. But I swear by the 220 rule, absolutely success every time. And I hope that you enjoy your corn cob jelly because, you guys, this stuff is absolutely delicious. Like I said, a little bit of honey flavor. Oh, and I got a perfect bite. Remember, I put jalapeno in mine. That has a nice bite to it. It has that sweet corn finish. This is going to be so yummy on toast and bagels and muffins and pancakes, and even on meat. I could really see this paired well on like pork or chicken. I might baste some meats with it also. It's so good. We really enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy it also. So, like I said, corn cob jelly. You can't get any easier than this, and you can't get much more delicious. Remember that 220 rule on all of your jams and gels, and happy canning, everybody.